I'm very delighted to introduce Katie Wade, who is going to present for us next on a topic that we know interests small businesses, which you can literally just see has come on the screen, which is apprenticeships, how to hire apprentices, what to do about it. And in fact, I see, and it makes me smile every time I read it, that Katie was responsible for the apprenticeships programme at Wetherspoons, which I just love. What a great job. And Katie, I have a property in Ramsgate, which I don't know if you know, is where Wetherspoons has the world's largest Wetherspoons in
Yes, I
Ramsgate.
do know. Yeah, I have been there.
So you're maybe not going to talk to us about Wetherspoons, but you are deeply experienced when it comes to apprenticeships. So Katie, the floor is yours. Would love to hear your presentation on how small businesses can make the most of hiring apprentices. Thanks so much for joining us, Katie.
Thank you very much. I'm just hoping that I can make this work. Can everyone see that now?
Yes, perfect.
Lovely. Great. So hi everyone. Yeah, I'm Katie. I'm a HR consultant, but I specialise in learning and development. Work for a great company called Bespoke HR in Surrey, and we support small businesses with all HR requirements. So it's really relevant at the moment to talk about apprenticeships, actually, because it's National Apprenticeship Week this week. Yeah, I'm really excited to talk to you about it for this short time. So the important thing about apprenticeships are that it's not just for the young people anymore. So when they were relaunched, probably, oh God, 2015, I think, it was relaunched really for all ages. So although by nature of who is applying for apprenticeships are normally the younger generation that are looking for alternatives to going to university, actually we can offer apprenticeships to anyone of any age. And you also don't need to recruit new apprentices into your business. You could be looking at your existing workforce and growing talent internally through an apprenticeship programme. So if we look at eligibility, first of all, then apprentices have to be over 16. And back in 2015, the compulsory age that you had to stay in education for was raised to 18. So this is now, if somebody wants to leave school and not go to college, then they could enrol onto an apprenticeship programme, and that would satisfy the criteria of the compulsory education. They must have the right to work, obviously, in the UK, and they need to live in England. And that doesn't mean that if you're in Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland, you can't complete an apprenticeship. It's just the funding rules are very different. And I'm only talking about England today. And then the other important thing is that they can't be in any other education. So if they are at college, at sixth form college, then they can't be doing an apprenticeship part-time with you. It needs to be their only education. So what are the different types of apprenticeship? Well, this is growing all the time. There's level 2 through to level 7. So level 2 would be your equivalent to a GCSE. And level 7 is equivalent of a master's degree. So there's a huge broad spectrum of different levels of apprenticeships that you can complete. And at the moment, those apprenticeships last from between 12 months to 6 years is the longest apprenticeship. Although it has been announced this week as well that 8 months will be the shortest apprenticeship that you can do. So they are going to reduce those. And that's because what the government are trying to achieve is to get more people into employment through and being educated at the same time. So to make it a little bit easier, because it is a big commitment for employers to have these apprentices on board as well. So in terms of the different types of apprenticeship, I love looking at the list of apprenticeships that are available. But there are apprenticeships in accounting. You can do marketing apprenticeships level 2 and 3. You could be a HR consultant up to level 7. You do software development, junior content producer, as well as the more sort of traditional things, which are your carpentry, electrical engineer. So it's not, it is really in anything at the moment. And my favourite one that I picked out this morning was a nuclear scientist. So you could do an apprenticeship to be a nuclear scientist, which I think is brilliant. So what you need to look at is whether an apprenticeship is right for your business. And this is something that is the most important thing that you need to think about. So the amount of time that it takes to support an apprentice in your business should not be underestimated. So not only do we need to check that there is a relevant apprenticeship for your business, which I'm sure there would be for all of you because the list is endless, but you really need to make sure that you've got the time. So 20% of an apprentice's working week should be spent on an apprenticeship. So if they're full-time, that's a full day a week, and they should be completing what we call off-job training. Now, that doesn't mean that they can't be in your place of employment. It doesn't have to be classroom learning, but it shouldn't be their normal day job. So it should be time spent on learning the new knowledge, skills and behaviours that that they need to learn as part of their apprenticeship. It should take place in normal working hours. So we shouldn't be saying to someone, oh, there's a webinar tonight that you could look at as part of your apprenticeship. It should be taking place in those working hours. Obviously, if the webinars are in the evening, then they can do those, but we should be giving the apprentices that time back in lieu. If you are wanting to look at what apprenticeship standards there are that might match your roles in the business, you can just go onto the government website. And there's an A to Z of apprenticeships, so you can have a look through there, and it very clearly states the name of the apprenticeship. It's all categorised, and then it says what level the apprenticeship is as well. The other thing that we should remember about not just the time spent for the off-job training, but the time spent for you as business owners or your managers that will be supporting these apprentices, to train them on the more sort of simpler things that we would expect people to know straight away, but actually by nature of the age of the people that normally apply for those apprenticeships, they might not be aware of. So just like general workplace etiquette, email and phone protocol, like all of those things that need to be taught to those people, and exactly what we were just saying in the previous presentation around setting those standards out early, that still needs to happen in an apprenticeship as well. So in terms of what you pay, so an apprentice needs to work for a minimum of 30 hours a week. They can work less than that, but it will make the duration of the apprenticeship longer. So ideally 30 hours a week. And then you pay them the apprentice rate. So I've looked at the figures for April coming up. So that would be £7.55 if you're aged under 19, or if you're over 19, then they will get paid that rate for the first year of their apprenticeship. But once they've completed their first year, then it goes up to national minimum wage for their age bracket. The other thing to note in terms of a cost saving for apprentices is that you don't pay employers' national insurance for any apprentices that are age under 25. And although these all seem like great cost savings, what I would say is please don't employ an apprentice to save money, because that won't happen, and it's not the reason behind paying less. The reason why we pay apprentices less is because of the amount of investment that you'd need to put in other parts of the business to support them. So please don't hire apprentices as a cost-saving exercise. In terms of funding available, so this is the great selling point for an apprenticeship, is that unless you are a levy payer, which means that you have an employment bill, an annual employment bill of more than £3 million, then you will just pay 5% of the cost of qualification. So if you're looking at the top end of the apprenticeship, so your level 7s, they're £27,000 is the cost of qualification, but as an employer to put through an apprentice, you'd only pay £1,350. If you have fewer than 50 employees, then you get 100% of that funding back for apprentices aged 16 to 18, and the full funding for someone's on an EHCP who's under 24. And then there's also an additional £1,000 incentive for apprentices aged 16 to 18, which again, please don't forget that the reason that incentive is there is because those employees will require more support from the business. So it's not just a way of getting additional funds into the business. The levy is changing this year to be called the Growth and Skills Levy. I won't spend a lot of time talking about it because I imagine that not many of us are levy payers. But for the smaller and medium-sized businesses, the changes will mean that it's easier for us to access funding from those larger levy payers. So we don't know the detail of that yet, but that should remove a lot of the administration and streamline processes to make it easier for those smaller and medium-sized businesses. So at the moment, apprentices need to complete a level 1 functional skills in maths and English. So your level 1, if that means that if somebody hasn't passed their GCSE maths and English, then they need to complete these functional skills alongside their apprenticeship. And that's at either level 1 or level 2, depending on the level of apprenticeship that they're completing. But if they've passed their GCSE, they've already got that, then there's no requirement for functional skills. I've put here that it's likely that this requirement will be removed for apprentices that are aged 19 and above, and actually that's come out today or yesterday. So any apprentices that are aged over 19 and don't have GCSE maths and English, they won't need to complete functional skills going forward. And I think that was a massive barrier for quite a few people that were enrolled onto apprenticeship programmes. In terms of the legalities, they're still an employee, so they need to have a contract. They're bound by employment legislation. But what I would consider is putting your apprentices on a fixed term contract if they're not already employed by you. And that you can match that to the duration of the apprenticeship programme, and it just makes it easier for if you are employing somebody just for that apprenticeship position. And it might be that actually as soon as they're finished, then you're going to get a new apprentice in to complete, so you're using this as a real sort of low level, I would say, within your business for those particular apprenticeship standards. You can also link that contract to making the apprenticeship mandatory. So they can't, if they wanted to drop out of the apprenticeship, then unfortunately that would terminate their employment contract as well. So if you're thinking about that, then and they are just employed as an apprentice, then you need to have that written into your employment contract. Apprentices need to have a training plan, so that's it's all planned out in terms of the timing, what they'll be learning each week. Your training provider, which I'll come on to in a minute, will be able to support you with completing that. But it's really important that this training plan is provided to any apprentice, and then it's signed by both parties. There's also an apprenticeship agreement that isn't mandatory, but again, you might want to ensure that that's signed by both parties as well, and it just sets out exactly what's expected from both the employer and training provider. And you can find there's a really useful resource for both of those things. There's templates available on the government website. So if you just searched for an apprenticeship agreement template and an apprenticeship training plan, then those you'd find those really easily. So if you want to go ahead and hire for an apprentice, then the first step is choosing your provider with the apprenticeship, and you can do that by just going onto gov.uk and type in find an apprenticeship training provider. You can select which apprenticeship it is that you want to start within your business, type in your location, and then it will just come up with a list of providers that will be able to provide that training for you. But please don't choose the first one on the list. Really do your research, and the most important part of an apprenticeship is making sure that you're linked up with the right training provider. And there are different things that you can look at. You can go on a website called ratemyapprenticeship.co.uk, and that they'll be able to, they list all of the training providers. They're all marked out of 10. It's real reviews from people that have used them. So I would absolutely look at that resource. Once you've decided to recruit, then talk to your chosen provider, because they might provide a recruitment service, and they would take care of that recruitment for you. Or you can advertise for free on the Apprenticeships website. There's specialist websites, like I just said, Rate My Apprenticeship, but also you can use Indeed, obviously, but just make it really clear that it is an apprenticeship position that you're looking for. Make it clear that it's a fixed term contract if that's the case. And then in terms of the onboarding and support, like I said, they need a contract. It can be fixed term. Remember that they'll require lots of support. 20% of their week is that off-job training. The training provider will provide a coach for them to speak to regularly. So although the line manager will be managing them whilst they're at work, they do still have the training provider that will make sure that they're ticking all the boxes as part of the qualification, to make sure that that qualification is obtained at the end. But you must make sure the line manager is on board. So if I haven't said it enough already, it requires a lot of investment internally. So please make sure that everyone is on board in terms of the support that that apprentice will require. And as long as that's the case, then they can have a great journey, and the not just the support that you get from that apprentice at the end can be great in terms of the wins for the business, but it's also a really great feeling to look at someone that you've taken that's unskilled and taking them to a point in their career where they can either stay with you to continue on that journey, or you've given them the skills that they need to go and apply for jobs elsewhere. And then at the end of their apprenticeship, they need to complete their endpoint assessment, which again is completed by an independent assessor. So that's separate to the training provider, but the training provider can sort that out for you. It doesn't, you're not tasked with that necessarily. And then the knowledge, skills and behaviours are tested. So it's an assessment of whether they have developed those knowledge, skills and behaviours as outlined in the apprenticeship standard. And that endpoint assessment might include a practical assessment, an interview, a project, written tests, a presentation. It could be all of those or one of those. It depends on what the standard is. And then, as with any fixed term contract, when that comes to an end, you should consider whether you've got a permanent role for the employee. And it shouldn't just be an excuse that the apprenticeship has ended to exit someone from the business for other reasons. For example, if their performance hasn't been great, if that's the case, then we should be managing their performance. But if they've done a great job and we have a position for them, then absolutely we should be offering them a permanent contract. So next steps, these are just some things that you can look at. So on the Apprenticeships government website, there's loads of tools, templates, advice on there. There's a free funding calculator to work out what it will cost you for each apprenticeship, how long each of those apprenticeship standards are, and then also the detail around training providers. We've got an apprenticeship checklist on our website that's free for you to download. And I've put my email, I've been brave as well. So if you want to contact me about any questions at all for apprenticeships, then give me a shout. I think that's it.
Amazing, Katie, that was superb. Thank you so much. All the information you need. And it reminded me as you were speaking, we've only ever taken on one apprentice at Enterprise Nation. And when you were talking about the feeling that you can have when when they come and join you and they're kind of studying at the same time. And our apprentice, who's called Luke Bolton, who kind of 8 years on is still with us. He's now an integral part of our engineering team. So yeah, I can speak from experience in terms of saying it's not a cheap way of hiring someone.
No.
Completely endorse your point about it requires investment into it. So huge thank you for that, because I know the government is particularly encouraging small businesses at the moment, as you say, to think about taking on apprentices. So that was just super helpful. So huge thank you, Katie.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much. And of course, ladies and gents, you saw Katie's email address on there. So feel free to contact Katie for ongoing help and information on all things apprenticeship.